Abstain.
Was I here?
You
I don't
were
know.
close enough.
I was here. It was
We have one abstention. That motion does carry. The chair's comments. I know this is a special meeting. Jude, I would like to welcome you back. I think most people know that Cindy resigned from the Board of Finance. She had a lot going on. So we want to thank Cindy for her service. She was very pleasant to have on the board, but we welcome you back and assist us. So thank you. Jude, you want to say, we have to explain the rules from now because they've changed a little bit. So if you don't go through the chair, there's a $5 fee that Justin's keeping track of that gets donated to charity, just so you know.
How about if we just donate it to the town's budget?
That works too. Peggy wouldn't hate that.
Finance member comments. Don't
Yes, I know this is a special meeting, so we can add to the agenda. I'm disappointed we don't have some discussion or action about the fire pension fund. So I would ask to please add it to next month's agenda.
So Phil, to let you know, I was pretty sure that I either sent an email or called, but it's my responsibility. So I'm sorry. It will absolutely be on the agenda.
Yeah.
Fair point. Okay, any other finance member comments?
Yes, thank you. So I attended the library meeting, board of directors meeting recently, and I just wanted to, it was mostly focused on Nicole Wiles as president. She has completed her term, and it was a celebration of her service. So I just wanted to acknowledge her and thank her for her time as the new, or as the past president. Keith Leckenbeck is going to be the new president of the library board of directors. That's it for me.
What's Nicole going to be doing?
She's still on the board.
Okay,
Relax.
relax. Any other finance committee members' comments? First select woman, Peggy Lyons.
Sorry, it's just my ear here from the event I was just at. I think just that I forwarded you a note that I received from Senator Murphy and Senator Blumenthal's office that our application for a $4 million grant for Academy was actually included in the appropriations bill. So that's exciting news. That's another $4 million in addition to the $4 million we received from the state. Still a long way to go. So I get through the budget process, but the fact that it's actually approved by the appropriations committee is a great step forward. So we're excited for that, and I'm hoping we will hear by, early in the fall typically, although you just never know what DC is going to shake out. So, so that's it for me. That's what I'm supposed to say. I know.
Citizens' comments, and the public would like to speak. Jacqueline, I'm relying on you for the
Nobody's hand is raised.
second time. Third time, public information session, seeing none, is now closed. New business, I'd like to take action to approve the special rate for Madison Hose Company from number 11 to number 8. Let's take to switch those and just move that up. So motion to move that, please.
So moved.
Second. Thanks. Someone, thanks. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, abstention, motion carries. Gentlemen, you're up. We have hold on, let me ask for a motion to approve a special appropriation for Madison Hose Company number 1 apparatus truck replacement in the amount of $135,000. Henry Porter, selecting approve. We have that form of motion. Yes, Justin.
Also,
Motion made by Fillmore, second by Jude. Discussion. Guys want to highlight?
Sure, I'll give a quick overview. Ladies and gentlemen, Bobby Kittle, Fire Chief. With me tonight, firefighter Riley and firefighter Salmani. There were 5 of us on this truck replacement committee, and in the last 12 years that I've been chief, we've replaced 6 or 7 different pieces. And I must say, this one, with the times we're in, it's been the most stressful and challenging trying to get the updated pricing on what these are going for. The last several years, I've been trying to get the best possible numbers I can to CIP. I mentioned it to the boards before recently, I think in January. Since the time we started the committee back in 2021, the truck's price has increased over 40%. 50%. And that's just way out of all of our hands, unfortunately. And we built this apparatus from scratch, numerous hours amongst all of us. I mean, it really starts at the rails, to the tires, to the engine, to the components of the vehicle. The biggest thing we're trying to do here is in 2027, there's a new standard with the motors. And it's to help with the emissions and carbon neutral. I'm not too keen on the language with it, but what I do know is it's going to be very expensive. Adding on to what the price of all these vehicles are running now, not just fire trucks, but anything diesel inclined, dump trucks, excavators, I'm assuming, but anything that is a diesel engine. The lead time to build these apparatus now is approximately 880 days, which is, we've never gone through that before. 2.5 years is basically where we are before we would take delivery of this vehicle. When I first started, it was 10 months. Sometimes just at a year. But now looking at the 2.5 year mark, that is why we formed the committee earlier than when it was due. And we also asked CIP to move the truck up 1 fiscal year so we can get ahead of that standard. Plus, it's going to be a first generation of this motor, which we have no idea how it's going to be, what the maintenance cost is going to be after that. A lot of electronics in there with red lights and yellow buzzards flashing at us. So by taking care of this now and getting the contract signed, this will secure, according to this 880-day mark, which will bring us into January of 26 and get the apparatus from there.
So Chief, basically you're asking us to move it up because of the time frame and the unknowns that to get the actual apparatus.
Also, the longer we go, the increase of the truck is rising about 2% a month. About 2% every month, there's an increase on the vehicle itself. So again, from that 21 mark where we started to today being over 40%, that's a huge number in a matter of 2 years. And that's why I came in again, the last few years here saying, this is where I think I'm at, this is where I hope I'm gonna be. And we did the best we could to get the appropriate number, fiscally responsible on our end.
There's also the change in emission standards, if you want to get this done.
That's the 2027 standard, yeah. And the 2.5 year lead time on building the truck is probably what I'm assuming all the other towns across the states are doing. So a lot of people are doing the same thing we're doing to get on the list to beat that 2027 mark, is my guess.
So just to clarify, we're not actually, are we moving it up? Because I thought we already did move it up. So now,
It's already moved.
yeah, so it's
Correct.
just moving up right now, it's costing a little more.
Yes, sir.
And $5 a peggy.
Yes, you got it. You're Italian.
I talked to him before.
Oh,
No, you missed the role.
You got the Katie?
So I know in CIP, we moved it up. This is, it's the 135 you're asking for that's over. And does that come out of the vehicle replacement fund or is that?
Those come out of fund balance to put into the CIP, into the truck apparatus.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other? Fillmore?
Yeah, I'm just curious, what apparatus are you changing? Is it a tanker or the?
Oh, I'm sorry, that's a good question. The main apparatus, our engine, it's 2005. And that engine runs to every call. It's the #1 truck in our fleet.
Oh, that's your attack.
Yes, sir. That is that apparatus.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks.
Just a quick question. I assume this deadline or the new rules coming into effect, by ordering the truck, because obviously we're not going to get it for a while. There's no risk of, telling us, hey, it's not delivered yet. Or we can fall into those new rules, or is it by, are we grandfathered by our commitment date or order date?
On the contract itself, it says if there's any strikes or anything like that, that doesn't pertain to it. But they pretty much guaranteed us by getting this done now with the 800-day lead time that we will be in the production line before that 27 standard comes into effect.
And with the old Truck, what are we doing?
So we were talking about what we could do with the old truck, but we're 2.5 years out, so it's really hard to come up with an answer for you tonight and say what it's worth, what its value is. Because that's not gonna stick, come 2026 at that time.
What are the options? Donating it to somebody, to give it,
We
not
could put
donate,
it
give
on
it
the-
to another town, sell it?
It's numerous options.
Okay.
Things are escalating by that much, you may have, maybe work.
There's numerous options out there like
Okay.
we've done in the past. But we just felt it's way too early to come up with any idea, maybe within a year's time of delivery. That's probably the time we'd start looking into that process.
Fillmore?
And just again, for casual information, the attack pumper you have now, that sort of moves down one step to be the backup, and now the one that's now your standby gets is the one that you dispose of in a couple of years? Or no?
I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question on you, sir.
Okay, so we have this number one pumper right now that you're gonna be replacing in
Yes,
2.5 years. But you also have I don't know what you call it, the standby or the number two
There is
pumper.
a rescue pumper, correct? That's the number 2 piece for the water
Yeah.
sources.
And so will you then, will the one that's the main pumper now sort of move down into that second spot, and then the one that's now in the second spot?
No,
Either
the
one.
one that will be replaced will be taken, the new piece will be the number 1 truck, and then
Yeah.
the second piece will still be number 2. The current truck that we have, that is optional for replace, donating, selling, or an option when the new firehouse is possibly built to keep it as a spare for North Madison and ourselves. Again, it's what the market is. If they're not worth much and we could afford to just maintain its yearly cost on it, that's something I might present to you for an option, but again, they're a dime a dozen fire trucks these days. But donating, we have done in the past to
That's
the
what I
rural
remember.
areas.
Yeah.
Down in Texas.
Yeah, we've done Texas, I think we've done New Hampshire,
Yeah.
a few of the real rural areas of the states,
Yeah.
but yeah, there's numerous options I'd be glad to present to you when that time comes.
Fair enough, Chief, thanks. Any other questions?
Yes.
Go ahead. Say no.
The condition of the one that you're replacing, is it in okay shape to last year's, or is it something we're gonna have to sink money into to?
It's
Yes, sir.
okay right now, and again, this truck times replacement isn't still for another year out. Again, I asked it to move up just to cover that 2.5 years, so it's still within its life cycle right now, technically.
Super helpful, thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Motion to approve the $135,000 pending the board of selectmen approval for truck replacement. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Extension? That motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll go back to discussion of funding requirements for the new elementary school building. You want to walk us through your, Yes.
Yeah, $5.
What's your knowledge?
I like it when we invite us, okay. So I sent out these materials. I had sent you a previous version of this when we had the last board meeting, and I just updated this to reflect some of the steps that the board of selectmen have taken. So the first, page 2 just highlights, top line shows kind of the original project costs, including financing that had been taken to the Madison voters for the $89.2 million. And then it shows, the second line is the amount of money that the board of selectmen at our last meeting authorized to transfer from from the Polson project to the elementary school project. And I'll talk a little bit about that later, why we chose to do that. That's what we talked about over the last 2 meetings. So that increases the overall project cost, but then we initially had planned for around $9.8 million in state reimbursement. That was kind of an estimate. And then we were very fortunate through the hard work of our Board of Education and our state officials to get an additional reimbursement from the state of $6 million. So it's showing that next line, anticipated project debt issued, reflects what we think we actually will have to issue now to fund all the projects in the renewal plan. And then in addition to that, the new school is going to have geothermal as part of the design plan, and that's been part of it since day one. That was part of the original scope of the project, and the expectation is that we would be getting around $2.5 million in incentives and rebates. Now, there's a discussion going on with the attorneys about, is that have to be netted off the bonds, or does it not? We're taking kind of the worst case scenarios that it just nuts off what we do for funding, like any other grant. So that's going to be a combination of things from utilities as well as federal tax incentives. So that nets down to this bottom line on the right, the roughly $71 million of potential anticipated project debt. So that shows from referendum day to today, we've cut it down to $18 million. We've reduced $18 million out of what we think we're going to have to bond. And then below is just reflecting the special appropriation that you guys will be voting on. The appropriation, after the referendum, there was original design for the school that had gone through and been approved by the Board of Ed. The Board of Ed received new enrollment projections after the referendum, and they felt it was prudent to add additional classrooms to the school to make sure that we can handle additional capacity. And so this 2.4 million reflects some of the project cost inflation as a result of those additional classrooms. So that just kind of summarizes this. The good news out of this, though, is that we are, not going to be needing to bond nearly as much as what we had originally anticipated when we had gone to referendum. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
The second page is about the new school project, and they came up with a design plan that was going to need around an additional $5.9 million that they did not have in the original project budget. That's a result of some of that is because of the additional classrooms, but then the rest of that is really inflation, hyperinflation, I would say, not normal inflation. Because I know when they put these plans together, they always put some escalation, but I mean, they've seen things go up, 10, 15, 20%, some things. So, and this is still an estimate. But in order to finalize and take the project, get approval from the state so that they can go out to bid, they have to demonstrate that they have secured the financing for that project. So the table summarizes here how we kind of came up with a way to fund that. And the 2.4 million was because of the additional classroom costs. And then the other part of that 5.9 million is what we decided to transfer from the Polson project. The way the resolution was done, when the town voted on it, the Board of Selectmen has the authorization to transfer funds between the different projects. So it gives some flexibility because we went out with one big package. We didn't do one separate thing for each building. We did a package. And so we asked our consultants to look. Polson had been kind of always there, but not really a deep dive. And so we had them do a deep dive on what Polson was actually going to cost. And so if you go to the next page, we were, I have to say, very relieved to see that their recommendation was that we actually could, the cost of doing the HVAC project and the auditorium was lower than what we had originally anticipated. And so, there was an ability to pull some of the money out of Polson, but still make sure we had enough funding to complete Polson. So that's why the Board of Selectmen authorized that transfer. So between those two actions, that would give the new school building committee, and if you go back again on page 3, adequate funds. So this is kind of a sources and uses table. The uses is the original construction, and then the design shows a shortfall of about $5.9 million. And where they're going to get that $5.9 million is if you approve the special appropriation for the extra classrooms, and then they've already received the authorized transfer of $3.5 million. There's also some bid alternates that, if they come back and get, the bids end up coming better than what we anticipated, and they've got all these contingencies built in also. There are like a list of alternates that they would like to add on to the project. And we've had conversations with them that before they use any excess funding for alternates, they're going to come back to the Board of Selectmen and talk about that. Because we just want to make sure that Polson is in good shape. And we feel confident, that's why we've moved the $3.5 million over, that Polson will be able to be completed. So that's kind of what this is. I mean, the 2.4 million I think, is a number that came up, was estimated by Colliers, I think, derived that number. And after consulting with bond counsel, they said you could appropriate for that rather than having to find out, transfer because it was an add-on done after. So I know it's a lot, but, and then there's other information in here, just talking about the timeline, and then contingencies, because, we're not gonna know a lot of this until the bid goes out later this year. We just wanna make sure the school, if we delay the school project and don't allow them to go out to bid, we miss a whole year. Because schools can only, those whole transition can only happen, and we have to be conscious of the school year. Also, every delay will result in really kind of stapling together these buildings still, Ryerson and Jeffrey, trying to keep them moving forward another year, so we don't want to delay the new school because of that, and then we're gonna deal with more cost escalations. So I think that's where the thought was, by doing the appropriation and the transfer, we keep that project on track, and everything then will be, work better too for the other transfers. Brown, they're working on this summer, so we're ahead on Brown, and the hope is that we would be starting Polson a year from now and getting that project going.
So this is everything now, right? I mean, like Ryerson's demolition is in here.
No, so Ryerson's demolition was actually taken out of the scope of the project by the building committee. They have the authority to do it, but as part of what the Board of Ed has said, Chair has said, and the committee has said that any funds, we're going to prioritize the use of fund. That's why if they have any savings in their contingencies, that's going to go first. I'm actually going to be sending a letter later this week to the building committee about this, and then the chair of the Board of Ed is going to be doing the same thing.
So what's gonna happen to Pilsen if there's not? I mean, Ryerson if it's not.
Well, it's gonna get torn down. I think everybody agrees. it's
So is
gonna
that
get torn down.
another
It's just how you,
appropriation?
it's just how you pay for it. We're hoping there's gonna be money in the project to do it. There's a surplus already. Based on these numbers, there's a surplus of Polson still, even after transferring the fund. There's $1.7 million. So technically, there is money in Polson if we don't, or 1.5 million. Here, this is after we transfer the funds, if you go by the cost estimates.
Yes.
So there's gonna be 1.5 million. Now, they might come back and say, we want more money for bid alternates. Well, we only transferred enough to cover the design as it's, or the project as it's designed now. And then there's gonna be a further discussion once the bids go out, and it is gonna be a priority. We're gonna make sure the funds are secured for the demolition of Ryerson.
So even if the building committee comes back and says it's not.
Well, they're not gonna have the money, I mean,
Okay.
they're not gonna
I'm
get,
with
they're only getting this funding for the current design plan, so. So it's part of the overall package, really, and we're gonna make sure that we get the funding, and we will have it according to these numbers.
Okay.
Let's open it up for discussion. Questions for Peggy? Justin, go ahead.
I did watch yesterday's meeting and the 12th, and I appreciate there's just a lot of moving pieces. And I guess my biggest concern, I have a couple of specific questions, but just like, it's almost like too early to me to be doing this, where the plans are. And is there a way we can kind of push this off, which I'll get to, but my specific question, the state rebates, the 9 plus the 6, we know, are those required to be used to reduce the bonding amount? They cannot be like split or applied any other way. Well, that kills one of my ideas, but.
Yeah, I know that's the problem.
Um,
The more successful we are on grants, it doesn't help us in terms of the owners.
And so, okay, so the grants, any state rebate money has to be used just simply to reduce, which really is, whatever, we'll get into, how is that really helping? It's the same project.
Well, it is reducing what we're
Of
bonding
course,
for,
right,
right.
right. Yeah, because what I'm trying to figure out is how can we delay this special appropriation request until the project is more fully designed? Like, how many classrooms were there? You say the classrooms were changed so they could be appropriated. What does that mean? Like,
It means that the original design that was ed specs that were approved by the Board of Education had 4 fewer classrooms. Then, the package got voted on. Then after, last spring, we got new enrollment estimates that we're seeing a surge in our younger populations preschool age kids. and
Yeah, I don't
they're
mean, I'm not talking about that. I'm just
Well-
meaning that when it was designed, when it was initially, at referendum, there was no design. It was just.
No, there was a certain, I don't know how detailed it was, but there was a built up of like classrooms and square
That's-
footage and all that stuff.
Yeah, no, but a narrative, like ed specs.
No, but yeah, but
Not with any real architectural designs to go along with them. Maybe like
Right.
general.
well, the
design.
number of classrooms and all that was specified.
Yeah,
And square
specified,
footage.
but not designed, not drawn.
Oh, well, maybe,
So how many classrooms were there in the original?
I don't know, I just know that they added 4 additional classrooms, so Graham can speak to that. Can you hear Graham?
Yeah, I don't remember the number, but in terms of the estimate for the referendum, it was basically a square foot cost estimate using the best available information at the time.
Right.
Yeah, and currently we're at 35% documents. It's called, design development, and that's the estimate that we have now is based on those documents.
Right, so you don't know how many classrooms there were before? There's just 4, they're looking for 4 additional, but we don't know on top of how many.
So there was like a population-based estimate, right, of what they thought was gonna go into the school,
Yes.
and so that number's gone up.
Yeah, it was like 40 to 44. I don't remember the exact number, but that was the magnitude.
So like 40 originally and now 44.
And that's based on the new enrollment numbers, and those numbers are spiking dramatically.
Yeah, I guess my observation from watching the 2 meetings and just thinking how the public might respond to this, and I think it was even said, there's probably gonna be more, there may be more special appropriation requests, as we further refine this. And I just think to the extent we can get somewhere much closer to the goal line, that's why I was asking how many classrooms, like, obviously I've seen no plans, but going from 40 classrooms to 44, it's not like you're, completely changing the building, maybe you're extending a wing out, I don't know, but, I mean, could that be an ad alternate? Could you have like an A and a B?
Well, we talked about this a lot before, trust me, they have spent an incredible amount, the design that we have, it's a commitment now that they would be taking out to bid for the project, so,
Right.
yeah, but the problem is, in order to get approval by the state to go out to bid, you need to have secured funding, so this is not meaning they're spending the money now, but they can demonstrate that we have the secured funding for this project, otherwise, we're gonna be going out to bid, and then what if, in the fall, we have a new board and they decide not to appropriate, we just wasted the entire process, we have to go back, redesign the school, and wait another, period of time before we can go out to bid, so
Yeah.
it's a timing issue, and, and as I've said, I think there is Graham and I've talked a lot about this, but, there's going to be, this is to secure it for bidding purposes. But we're gonna be watching all this and seeing how the bids come back, and then things are gonna be shuffled around possibly after the bids come back.
But there's, at 35% drawings, there's a real possibility. I mean, I guess to be optimistic, there's a possibility the bids might actually come in, lower than we,
Right?
but
Right.
there's also a real possibility that there'll be more additional requests made, a lot, special appropriation requests made, and that's kind of what I wish we could avoid that. I just think that's not gonna be well received.
Well, I mean, there's no guarantee that that won't happen, but then we'd have to say, can we afford to even do that? We might just have to scale back or something and delay the project a year. I mean, that's gonna be a decision that we would be making in the fall.
Yeah, I heard that, and this is
Yeah.
obviously just my opinion, but to me, if to get it right, and I know there's discussion about Polson and geothermal, and I know it wasn't in any stated, official proclamations, but I'm pretty sure that was discussed, and I think that's what the 21, I think someone even said, the 21.5 at least contemplated geothermal for Polson.
No,
It was
Never.
Never
We gotta
got.
keep this meeting in order.
I'm so sorry, but I
No,
was.
that's fine.
I was on the board at that time and
I'll
it
split
was
the five,
never
250.
discussed. The first time I heard of geothermal at Polson was at a board of selectmen meeting.
So, anyway, that's where I'm at. I wish, and that's why I say, like, 4 additional classrooms to me could almost, obviously, I'm just thinking abstract, but like that, the magnitude of that could qualify or could be maybe looked at as an ad alternate, and we get, because I just think you'll have a better chance. I mean, I know no one goes to town meetings, but I think you'll save yourself a lot of aggravation, you know, with the public if it's further advanced.
So,
or
to your point,
nickel and dime.
I've asked these same questions, but Graham, if you can explain.
Yeah, exactly. So
The
relative
key
to the estimates,
to that is the whole way the building is designed to include those 4 classrooms. Graham,
yeah, so first of all, relative to your question about the cost estimating, so we've hired a professional, construction manager by qualification-based selection process and one of the preeminent construction managers, and they've done the estimate. We hired an independent cost estimator to check their estimate, and then we went through a month-long process to reconcile the numbers. So we have the best possible number that we can have. That said, we also are currently carrying a significant contingency, which we're being advised by Colliers, who's been our owner's rep for many years. At this point, we should be carrying that contingency, which we think is conservative. Relative to the ad alternate, the issue is if you have to design the mechanical and electrical systems for the entire building. So if you remove the walls and took it out, you would never realize the true savings if you took it out, because the mechanical electrical systems, which are a substantial portion of the cost, have to be designed, as a complete building. So you have to, size it for the full build, because you can't add those in after the fact, because it's a geothermal integrated system. So it is very complicated. And I was thinking along the same lines, but it's very complicated to peel that part of the wall out and do 2 bids. And the more you're complicated for the bidders, the less likely you're going to see that value. But as I said, we have a substantial contingency, and we think we've got excellent, very conservative cost estimating numbers. So we think it's very unlikely we'll come back and ask for more money. And we're optimistic that, we'll be able to return some of that money to Polson and to do other things, and we won't need that money. But we're being conservative at this point to proceed, using the best advice possible.
But I'm gonna jump in there. I mean, I'm gonna say some comments, but just, I want to let some other board members see.
Yeah.
Anything. Anybody else like to, Katie?
I have just a couple of questions and then a comment. Is it true, I'm a liaison for the new building committee, and I missed the last meeting, but you formally closed the design phase, correct?
Yeah, we've completed design development, which is like 35%. So we're waiting we're basically waiting to tell the architect what to do to complete the building, the 100% drawing, so we can put them out to bid. But he needs direction from us to say, this is what we're gonna do.
Gotcha. And then and you might not be able to answer this, and I don't see Bill on the call, but Peggy, you might know, is Brown on target and on budget? Okay, so the reason why I asked that, John, is because having been on the board when this was studied ad nauseum and discussed and brought to the public, this was a comprehensive plan. I know the school building committee kind of has tunnel vision in terms of the new building. And while I think that building is important, I am very mindful that we're not forgetting other pieces of what was promised in this referendum, including Ryerson, including Brown School, including the new school, and including Polson. I have heard several times tonight that we're going to save money to knock down Ryerson, and we're going to save money to make sure Polson is complete, and the new school has a list of things that they want in their building. All that makes me a little nervous because there's only so much money that was approved at referendum, and we cannot go beyond that. So even with all of this cost savings, I just want to be mindful that this was a package that went to referendum. And while I know this school building committee's focus is on the new school, we have to remember and have fidelity to the entire package that was approved at referendum. And that's all.
Can I add something to that?
Go ahead. Yes, you can.
Well, and again, this is my first meeting back, so I am on a learning curve here, but I share Katie's concern here. I believe that part of the success we had with the referendum was that all of the schools' issues, all the schools were being addressed, maybe not all of their issues, but at least all of the schools' major issues were being addressed. And for parents who were having children in the public school system in Madison, there was something that was being represented to each of them about what was going to be done. So one of the questions that I have is, because I know I'll be asked about it and I'm not, and I don't see the information here. The estimate for Polson seems to have come down about $5 million from when we went to referendum. And I'm wondering how did that come down 5 million? So when people who are having their kids go to Polson in 4 or 5 years from now, they're going to be saying, well, we approved a certain amount of money in the referendum. Some of it's being moved around because the estimate came back, which is great to get, an estimate that's so substantial, but I think that's a rather substantial amount of money. So I'm just wondering, what were the elements that were honed in on to create a $5 million difference between the concept that was voted on by the public and what we're actually seeing here as the estimate that we're going to be working off?
Sure.
So there was never, and this was prior to when I've been involved in this, but there was only a very general estimate put together on Polson. There was never like a professional engineer that went in and did a full evaluation of the system and put an estimate together. The numbers that we got now, though, that was done by a professional engineering firm. And there was a memo that at least the selectmen received. Was that included in the packet? I think did you get the selectmen memo as well? Because, I guess because you're voting on the appropriation for the new school and not that. But there's a memo that details the cost estimates that came up and, they just went in and looked at the system and did a full evaluation and came up with what they thought it was needed to be done. I can't explain how the numbers, because these numbers date back to 2017, I think, and then there was like an inflation added to it. But I don't think, you were on the board, I don't think that you brought an expert in to actually put that $21 million number.
No, Bill McMinn went,
Yeah.
sorry, John, but Bill McMinn went to and did like projects, but I think like Jude, it's hard to appreciate how the new school is coming in so much more expensive.
Right.
And an old
Right.
school with an antiquated system is going to be cheaper. So I think that,
But maybe
It could depend though on what was envisioned needed to be done back then, is maybe not, maybe they're reusing a lot of the duct work or, some of the electrical upgrades aren't there. So that's another thing, there's in here about $350,000 of cost savings because of the generator project. So some of that project is gonna need electrical upgrades, so there's some cost savings we're getting by bundling the two projects. But I couldn't speak to the engineering reasons. But we do have a detailed, report from them, and look, we were all like, yes. I was thrilled because we were all going, oh my God, is this gonna work, and how are we gonna do it? And
so we can definitely tell, our neighbors
gonna get
that
done, yeah.
it's the same work that's gonna be done, it's the same scope. And nothing has been cut out,
no,
and it's the
No.
same scope.
even the auditorium, they used recent numbers based on a number of different factors, and I'm trying to think, was it Colliers or was it who did the HVAC? I'm just going blank now. Estimates. No, Bill's been working, he's not on the call, is he? But it was a separate company that did this. Okay.
And so we were relying a lot.
No, the one we just had, that was like DL companies or something, and they
Yeah,
also.
thank- You want me to, this is Blair Richardson with
Oh,
Colliers. You want me to-
okay, yeah, I'm getting all these projects mixed in my head right now, but yes.
So
Go ahead.
I've been working with Bill through this whole process. My background, I'm a licensed professional engineer, and my background is building design and construction. So I have experience working for a mechanical contractor for 5-6 years. And prior to coming to Colliers, I worked for a multi-discipline engineering firm for 7 years. So the exposure that I've had, a lot of K through 12, a lot of municipal work. One we were also surprised. I was surprised. Colliers was surprised at the cost estimates that came in most recently. Going back to the original cost estimate, that was based on a concept. We wanted to add air conditioning to the school, and there was a dollars per square foot estimate that was allocated to that project, with the expectation that if you take an aggregated average for all the schools that we've done in the state of Connecticut over the past 10 years, that's roughly what the cost dollars per square foot comes out to for adding air conditioning to an existing school. And typically that would include a 40-50% contingency, because it's an idea. We want to add air conditioning. We knew the next step was to hire a professional engineering firm to provide the feasibility analysis, give us a couple options, and then make a recommendation for the next phase, which would be detailed design once the option is selected. And that included a professional third-party construction cost estimator. And Colliers has worked with this cost estimator in the past, well-respected, highly qualified, and based on these schematic designs and the calculations that the engineering firm provided, that was the basis for the professional third-party construction cost estimate. Again, we were also very surprised at the price where it came in. They included a 20% contingency, and that's appropriate for a schematic narrative level of design. We would anticipate that contingency would either come down or the project cost would rise to match that. But at this point, we believe that the 13 million for conventional systems, again, not looking at the geothermal ad that's been discussed recently, all the information that we have provided by BL Companies, a professional engineering service provider, and Alana was the third-party professional construction cost estimator. That's how we got to today.
Fillmore had some questions. I want to keep this. Go ahead, Fillmore.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Well, mainly a couple of comments. First of all, looking at the Polson, where we're saving 5 million change against the original estimates. And I would, rather than shifting that over to do something new and additional at the grade school, why not go ahead and use that for the geothermal, which is $5 million. I think that is certainly within the scope of what was discussed, but it's not because that's like basically a high grade HVAC. It's part of an HVAC kind of thing. It's not like we're going to spend the $5 million on a playing field or something that's totally different. It's just a better HVAC system, and one that is in keeping with the direction that the town wants to go. It's more efficient, like the library, et cetera, et cetera. So I think I would be much happier saying, okay, take that 5 million and put in the geothermal at Polson, and we have a much better HVAC system. And then you still get the hopefully the 3.9 million in grants and so forth. Now moving over to the new school project, without getting into the pluses and minuses of whether we need additional classrooms or not, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's a little bit of a sleight of hand to do this in a special appropriation. This whole project was approved at referendum. The townsfolk voted on it. And I think that for this kind of money, for $2.4 million for this project that's already been approved at referendum, we need to go back and take that 2.4 to a referendum. Have another referendum this November. We're going to be coming to the polls anyway. So have a referendum to add $2.4 million to the project, if that's what we all agree is needed. Or whatever number you decide on. I think it's a little lack of transparency to do this extra funding out of the fund balance when the projects as a start were funded or were approved by the townsfolk at a referendum. So I'm not in favor of a special appropriation, but I would be supportive of taking it to referendum.
Other comments from the rest of the board?
I just have a couple
Go ahead, Justin.
Is it possible, like maybe just ask the question, what would it take to design? I mean, I'd almost feel more comfortable appropriating architectural dollars to basically complete both designs and then see where we're at. Maybe I don't understand this bidding process. Who do we need permission to go out to bid for? Or from?
I still think they need to finalize the project before they can go out to bid. So it's kind of hard to tell them to architecturally draw something that we have to
This is a
decide what
big
it is.
difference. You know, this $2.4 million, if you say you're not gonna support this, they're gonna have to go back and redesign the entire building. So it's gonna be a very different school. So, and the one thing that I think we all don't wanna do is, let's say what we would do with the high school, where you start cutting corners. And I think the thought was, we need these classrooms. And I've had conversations with Graham and the building committee, spent a lot of time, you know, to just, you know, to save $2.4 million, we're gonna, you know, cut those out of the project, and then where are we gonna be 5 years from now? Oh, gosh, why don't we have this for us?
No, I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting design it further. And if you have to design both options, like how much would that cost? How much would that add to the architectural bill? I'd rather,
It costs money to design it, and then the point, Graham will let you speak to this, but we need to have a budget before they can go out to bid. So, and you're gonna come out with, I mean, you have to have plans. They've invested a lot of time and consultant money, and architectural money to come up with a plan that they're pleased with and will do all the things that the Board of Education wants them to do. They now need to go to the state to get approval to go out to bid.
maybe that's with the completed plan. I'm
With the
saying,
plan,
I'm
right.
saying complete the plans for both designs.
Listen,
It doesn't-
I want to jump in here for a minute, just, Justin, I got a question.
Well, it's in the form of a question, can we do that? And what's the additional cost?
All right, so the question.
Maybe that's not answerable at this point, which I
Yeah,
understand.
so I want to get into the question. So can we do both designs is the question, and what would it cost?
Yes.
I don't know.
I mean, the cost of I mean, the base design is like $6 million for the design of the building. Maybe it's a little less than that, but I mean, I don't think it's realistic to design two buildings all the way through, completely different systems.
All right, so the answer there would be not sure that it's realistic. I'm just gonna make a couple of comments and then, we can continue this discussion or move the motion. Just the things I've been hearing and to go back, first of all, about the budget and let's start with just this was approved with referendum in February of 2022. If you go back a few years ago, I know there was a try once before, the voters did approve it, and we talked about a lot of savings or spending, but when you talk about debt and what we could have borrowed the money for, which we will be borrowing at now, it's a huge difference. So if we talk about the 15 million that we're gonna get reimbursed from the state, I'm sure a couple of years ago, Stacy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we probably could have been long-term bonding for 2%. Now it's what, 4? So probably, so you're talking 2% more on 90 million. That's a huge difference, right? So you're talking almost $2 million a year in debt service. So we want to save money. The more we delay, the almost always the more things cost. We talk about, the project being, if we don't do it now, we might have to delay the project. So we delay the project, we have to go back out and redo the design. We're talking more money that's going to cost us in the future. Those might also the classrooms. Is 5 classrooms enough? I don't know. I'd rather see you even do more classrooms because normally you can't go back, right? You can't go back and add classrooms once the school is built. It's kind of very difficult to do. I know in the 90s, they put modulars on a lot of buildings and some of them lasted, a lot of them did not. So you gotta be mindful of that. If you're gonna do this project, let's do it right. On a $61 million school project, we're talking about 2.4 million. And with all due respect to Colliers and to Graham, I'm not sure if that's going to be enough. I'm not sure if they know it's going to be enough. Hopefully things come down. It may or may not be, but you're talking 4% increase. On the reduced debt, you're talking about, on the $15 million, you're talking about saving $600,000 a year just in interest alone. So there's a lot of good things out there. I'm okay with the 2.4 million because I want to keep the project moving forward. I understand Fillmore that there was a referendum that $90 million was approved, 61 million for the new school. But you're going to go to a town meeting. That's the system that you have. That's allowable, right? We're allowed to do that. So I'm okay with that also. If we're going to do it, we notify the public. Hopefully they show up. Hopefully they get informed. Sarah from the Shoreline Times is probably still listening, but we asked her to, the more she can educate people so they understand it, the more people know. And it's a different world. I know some people don't read the papers, but I'm trying to get them there. And as far as go back to Polson, all I want to know is they're going to do it, right? And my good friend here, Fillmore, with all due respect, if it costs us $5 million more to do geothermal, I'm not sure you're going to get the return on that investment. If I just talk about ROI, I'm not sure, and I may be in the minority here, but I'd rather save the $5 million and still have the HVAC and still have a school, because it's easier to do geothermal in a newer building or a newer renovation than just to turn into an old building and try to do that. So those are my comments here. So I'm going to support the 2.4 million. As long as we all agree that Polson's going to be done and it's going to be done within that time frame, it's great. And I'll go back to my vice chair here talking about Ryerson in the building. It's going to have to come down, right? That may be, maybe we save the money, there may be another special appropriation, but having a vacant building, we've seen an academy, at the end, just cost you a lot more money. So that's going to have to come down. They may be back and forth, this board or some new board at some point in the future asking for funds to do that, but it's going to have to come down because in the long run, it just costs you a lot more money. And I'm sure I skipped a couple of things, but the time, the return on investment and the time value of money to delay a project like this is exponential.
Can I just,
You're going to talk after
I am.
Go
That
ahead.
was brilliant. No, I was just to Fillmore's point about geothermal at Polson, and I don't want to confuse it with geothermal at the new school, but to put geothermal in Polson is not just putting it in, it's digging up ball fields, it's interruption in school learning. It is busing kids during that time to other fields to participate in sports and things like that. So it's a lot, it's much more antiquated than just putting it in the new school. And so, but I wholeheartedly, shocker, agree with John, that, ultimately this is just about making sure we can illustrate that we have the funding to move forward. And it's money wasted to this point if we don't move forward. And ultimately, I believe, based on what's on this paper, which I'm going to keep, it looks like we will be bonding for less than we went to referendum for and not more. And that is significantly less. And that is, I think, when articles get written in the paper about it's $5 million over budget and things like that, that's what's getting missed. We're talking about moving funds temporarily to be able to illustrate that we can move forward.
So I just tapped it Fillmore because I thought I said something about the geothermal. It's much easier in new building. Katie had it one off me and talk about moving it. I said it in one sentence, but that's okay. Go ahead.
Okay, Katie, to your comment, the disruptions that you mentioned will happen whenever it takes place. So if we,
Not if it doesn't.
so you're suggesting that we do not consider putting geothermal at Polson?
I say that's not what the voters intended. And so I'm saying if we're talking about costs, then why would we add to the cost that we went to referendum for?
I want to be clear. That's what I said.
Yeah.
Because of the costs associated with it. And that's why I said that sometimes it's a lot more difficult to do it in an existing structure than a new structure. And I said I might be in the minority thinking of that, but I also think of the savings of the money if you don't get the reimbursements thing, which I've heard you say, man, you don't know, right? There's no guarantee there. Jude, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I just kind of want to also point out that, again, just so it's clear, because it seems like there might be some confusion, geothermal was not part of the Polson referendum dollars. The 5 million that's in geothermal here does not include the field reemplacement, like Katie said. It doesn't include the displacement of students and having to pay for all of those costs of busing up, finding spaces for them to go. So while 5 million is the cost here, at least for putting it in here, which wasn't even part of the referendum, it's going to be much more than 5 million. And I'm not really sure why we're even talking about that because it's not part of the cost that was in Polson. So right now, we're looking at Polson as, there's a savings of 5 million on the estimates. And if you're looking at the new school, we've got savings of 15.9 million is what I was adding up. So this is not going to be costing the citizens of the town more. We're not going back to referendum to get authority to add more to the debt. If anything, what we're doing is trying to effectuate the cost savings we have now if we go forward now with the project. And this is a piece of what needs to be done to go forward with the project and save the town these, to effectuate these savings. So to me, it just makes fiscal sense. I think we are being transparent. We are talking about this at a public meeting. There's going to be a town meeting. I would use lack of transparency with great hesitancy. And the money is in the undesignated fund balance. And this is, as we said, this is just to show the state that we have the funds to do these projects. It's not like we're spending all of this money right now. And I don't think we should not do this because some people might want to go out to referendum and ask the town for our ability to get even more bonding when that's nothing that's been discussed or
I'm
proposed.
gonna jump back in here too. I know Fillmore wants his hand. I don't want this to go round and round. I
Okay.
stay on track. That's fine.
Yeah, two things. Number one, if we go to referendum, that doesn't automatically mean it's added to the bonding. If it passes at referendum and we spend the money and go out to bonds in a couple of years and so forth, we don't have to borrow that money. If we still have the money sitting in the fund balance, we can appropriate it then. Or we could put it in the debt service reserve. There are all kinds of ways we can use 2.4 or whatever the number might be. And it doesn't add to the bonding debt at all. So that's point. So it doesn't add to the cost. Point number two, here we're still in the June meeting. If we the Board of Selectmen could bring up in their July meeting a referendum question, we could vote on that at our July meeting, which is 2 or 3 weeks, and it could go to referendum early September. So it's not like we're waiting a long period of time. And by so doing, we will have given the citizens, and let's face it, nobody shows up at the town meeting, but we will have given the citizens, at least some percentage of them will come and vote in a referendum.
So,
Okay.
thank you. And we're funding requirements, this bill that we haven't gotten to a motion yet. We haven't really got anything we can act on yet. I will say, and I've been here before, when things are important to people, they've shown up, whether it's a town meeting, and I can speak for a school there off of, is it the island or something? I remember seeing some, so it's possible, and I think it's more that the people aware. With that, right now, we're still in the discussion of funding requirements for new elementary school building. Fine. Any other discussion? I'm gonna go to the next two so we can discuss and take possible action. If there's no further discussion on All right, so we have discussion of postal renovation project and possible transfer of funds. I think we've had some discussion on that. The transfer of funds would be to the new school in the amount of, say it again?
2.4.
No, that's the appropriation.
Three.
Or
3.5.
3.48,
No,
3.5.
3485.
3.485. So the discussion,
Yeah. Yeah, they don't.
is that,
Basically, you don't vote on the transfer, the board of selectmen does, this is just to talk about
we talked,
what we already did, so.
I think we talked about that.
Yeah.
I want to say
We did.
to the, for a while. All right, so then, any other, I think we covered that. Discuss and take action, possible action, approve resolution and recommend a special appropriation of 2.4 million for construction of additional classrooms at the new pre-kindergarten through grade 5 school on Morgantown Road, approved by the board of selectmen June 12, 23, pending a special town meeting approval. Like a form of a motion, please.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Discussion or further discussion? Justin?
Just a comment, just to make sure, I'm not here to not spend money. I think this appropriation is warranted and would get approved at the appropriate time. My own concern, I think actually sharing with Katie and Jude, that we want to do it right. So the only final comment I'll leave you with is, this is a generational change for our town. And to me, I mean, honestly, in the scheme of things, if it took an extra year to get it right, I would bat an eye at that, but that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My concern with the 2.4, another year and another increase on your debt would actually cost you more in the long run. I respect your opinion. I'm happy to hear it. Any other discussion? Seeing now, we'll do a roll call vote. Yay is in favor of the 2.4 million appropriation from the undesignated fund balance. Nay would be against. I'll start to my left. Jude?
Yeah,
Yay, 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 yay. Katie?
Yay, is that what we're saying?
You can say yay or yes.
Yes.
Yes. Justin?
Nay.
Nay.
One more nay, and I will say yay, yay, that motion carries 4-2. All right, we did the appropriation for discuss and take action to approve a return of project balance in the ARPA fund, the amount of $180,138 approved by the board of selectmen on May 22nd, 23. Can I get that in the form of a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Katie. Can I get a second? Second. Thank you, Justin. Comments? We have a motion second to return the balance of the ARPA fund. Any discussion or comments? Steve?
Sorry.
Sorry. you didn't-
What did not get, spent?
Yeah, I don't have the.
Okay.
The list, is there Yeah. no list in the packet?
And then what, this money goes back into the undesignated?
No, it goes to ARPA.
It goes back to ARPA.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a number of projects that got scaled down or they were determined not to be feasible.
I think we passed some of those. I just remember.
Yeah, we've been doing
Yeah.
bits and pieces, so this is probably the last round we'll be returning. And I'm trying to remember what the biggest one was on
I
that.
can send it to you tomorrow.
Yeah, it's no big deal. I just, are there other things on the list that we want to fund, or do you have ideas?
Oh, yeah, that's one, yeah,
Oh, okay.
and then there'll be more coming for a final plan for the remainder.
Right now, there's a motion and second to approve the return of the balance of the ARPA fund, the amount of 180,138. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstention, that motion carries. So now we're going to discuss and take action on round 16 ARPA fund request totaling $9,720 approved by the board of selectmen May 22nd, 23. Take that form of a motion.
So moved.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
I think Kate motion and second.
Oh, she did.
I thought somebody else.
Thank you, Jean. We got a motion made by Katie and second by Jean. I'm pretty sure it's the same person. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed, abstentions, that motion carries. Discuss and take action to approve a routine line item transfer for fiscal 23 totaling $122,400 by the board of selectmen June 12, 23.
So moved.
Thank you, Katie. Second.
Second.
Fillmore, Jean, I think I heard. Discussion.
What's,
I
Routine
think
line.
the bulk was, it should be in your packet, was Public Works.
yeah.
And it really was just moving money within the department. I think land use also had an item in there, a couple of
Real
those
small
small
for
ones.
paving material. It goes up like a month ago.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think the bulk was public works for about 94 of
Yep.
that total.
To put in for paving.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, abstention, that motion carries. Financials, any questions on the financials? No more? No, I was gonna call on you before you put your hand up.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Looking at the fund balance page, still looking very healthy and, girl Stacy from, all that nice interest.
Yeah, the breaks in there, please, Palmer.
I'm sorry, what?
The breaks are in there on that
The
line
rates are in
item.
there, she said.
Oh, okay.
I was wondering if you're gonna ask, but yeah, it's SIP right now for last month was 5.12%.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay. I didn't see that. Thank you.
Is that your question?
No, he just complimented. He likes to compliment.
But now it is.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I assume that, these numbers are basically unchanged from the last couple of weeks, so,
Correct.
so come next month, you'll have,
You will have much fine-tuned numbers. We need the books open for another few weeks.
Sure.
Things roll in. We have accrued payroll. We have invoices that do pop up, but as of right now, I think this is a pretty conservative, but a good estimate.
And on that, along those lines, I was 99% sure I sent the email that the fireman's pension on the agenda tonight. We just have not an amount, just discussion, to take possible action on the fireman's pension for July. Please.
Okay, I must miss that.
I don't think I sent it to you, so
Okay,
I'm sure it was
we
my
will
fault.
get it. I have a big star. It'll be on the next.
Fillmore's not speaking to me now.
yes, I am.
You're not speaking to me.
But that's not the case, so. Any other questions on the financials? Citizens' comments. Jacqueline, you have anybody there?
I had no hands raised, but I have some questions. Can you see the questions on here?
No,
Oh my God.
Okay, I can read them. All right, I'll read them. Janet Nicolini said, "It sounds to me like the 4 new classrooms are being requested on a maybe and a worst case scenario. How many students in total are planned for the 40 classrooms, and can potential additional 100 students, estimating 24 students per class? That would mean only 2.4 extra kids per classroom. Worst case, is that so bad?" And then she said, "Wouldn't it be best for you all to gather all the information on number of classrooms and enrollment projections before saying yes to this appropriation?" And then there was an anonymous comment, which I don't think I need to read because we don't take anonymous comments. So that was it.
Okay, got on for the record. No one else?
Nope, all good. All good. No one else.
Closed. No more?
Move we adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Adjourned at 8:40.